really misunderestimated how hot it is. Absolutely baking. I also think I'm going the wrong way. I want to go to the lake, which I think is that way. I'm not sure. We'll find it. Today I wanted to talk about the Lumix S5ii because I've had that camera now for around about 6 or 7 months, so I wanted to talk about just the things that I really like about it and the things that, not that I don't like, but maybe things that I would like to see on the next update of the camera or the next Lumix camera to be released, whenever that might be. This is the perfect spot to talk about one of my favourite features of the S5ii, which is the dual native ISO. So the base ISO when you're filming in vlog is 640, but you also get a second native ISO which is 4000. So when you're filming in darker situations like this that I'm in now, this sort of tree den that someone's built in the middle of a forest, it's pretty dark in here, but it means I can bump up the ISO to 4000 and not have an issue with any of the added grain that you get typically when you bump up the ISO. Quick reference, you can see the difference it does make shooting at ISO 4000, which I'm currently shooting at. I'm now going to drop it down to 640. And you can see how dark it is. It is a lot darker in here. This is quite an underexposed image, so if you were to try and bump up the shadows or the midtones, then chances are you're going to get quite a grainy image. So to be able to shoot at ISO 4000 and do all of that in camera and have a nicely exposed image, that's a win. What was that thumbs up? Why did I do a thumbs up? I don't know. So this shot here that I just took of me walking over the bridge is a perfect example to talk about vlog and the dynamic range of the S5ii, because it is absolutely nuts. If you look at that shot, we've got the bright blue sky, we've got the cloud, the shadows and the trees, and it has kept all of the detail in that shot, and it looks so sharp and crisp. And I've not really got a bad word to say about using vlog and the dynamic range that the S5ii gives you. I am using a polarizer, which does help a little bit. So if you look at the sky, just darkens the sky down a little bit, which does help. But apart from that, I'm not doing anything else apart from exposing the image correctly. Cyclist. One thing I do use when I'm shooting in vlog is the monitor assist. So that means the monitor on the side of the camera, the LCD display, shows a Rec 709 image instead of just the flat vlog image, which does help exposure and just being able to see what you're shooting a little bit easier. And if you wanted, you could import your own LUT so you can monitor using that as well. It is great. It makes exposure so easy, and you're pretty much going to nail it every single time. I forgot how hard it was to film outside when the sun's going in and out behind clouds. Now, the value for money when you are talking about the Lumix S5ii is one of the main things to think about when you are thinking about buying this camera, because it offers so much more value than other cameras in its price range, and it is cheaper than them as well. The Sony a7 IV, for example, costs about $2,500 just the body. The Lumix S5ii you can get with a lens for $2,000. It also offers loads more video exposure features, such as your luminance spot meters, your waveforms and graphs, to help you get the perfect exposure every single time. And those features aren't found in the Canons and the Sonys at this price range. It just offers so much more flexibility when it comes to video. If you are into filmmaking, documentary making, that sort of thing, that's what this camera is aimed towards, more so than the photos. Even though this camera does still take incredible photos, and I've used it for photography and I've got prints from this camera and they look absolutely incredible, but it is aimed more so towards the video side of things. I'm getting cramp in my foot. Ow! The IBIS is another thing that I want to mention about the S5ii, because the original Lumix S5 did have incredible IBIS. However, the S5ii just takes it to another level, and it really helps smooth out that footage and get rid of those micro jitters in your footage. If you stick it in boost IS mode, there is shots that you can rival using a tripod with. You'd never know that it was shot handheld. And if you stick it in E-stabilization, that does a great job as well. There is a small crop in E-stabilization. That's the same across every single camera that has E-stabilization. I will typically have IBIS on all of the time, unless I'm doing something that I really want that proper handheld look. But IBIS is brilliant in this camera, and it is well worth using. I also don't have a clue where I am. I'm lost in the middle of a forest. There's worse places to be on a sunny day though, I guess. I found a lake that I came to find. So nice. Well, I can't quite get down to it, which is a little bit annoying, but not the end of the world. Such a nice day. These are my favourite days. A nice day, come and find somewhere nice, make a video. But I'm gonna go home now because I am absolutely starving, and I will finish this video at home because there's a few things I want to mention about the S5 II that I don't hate, but just that I'd like to see improved on the next version. As is the case with most cameras, there's always going to be a few little niggles and things you're not quite sure about, because unfortunately there isn't any such thing as the perfect camera. However, the Lumix S5 II for me fits my needs in pretty much every single way. There's just a few little things that I would like to see improved on in the next version that I think would make this pretty much the perfect mirrorless camera. The first one is a tiny little thing, and I'd really like it if the shutter would close when the camera is off, because it's really easy to get dust on the sensor, and I'm a little bit paranoid about that. I found myself constantly using the rocket blower to blow off any dust and sensor cleaning swabs, but I'm really paranoid about scratching the sensor when I'm doing that. So it's just a little thing, but I think it would make a big difference. Another thing is just a slight button placement thing, and I've seen other people mention this as well, but it's to do with this dial just on the top corner here. Now this is assigned to my shutter speed, but you can custom assign it to whatever you want. But when you're holding the camera, it's really easy to just slightly knock it like that without realizing and changing, for example, my shutter speed, and that's something that you don't want to be doing when you are shooting video. For example, my shutter speed is actually my shutter angle, but the same applies. You're effectively changing the shutter speed. So I feel like if the dial was slightly less on the edge, that wouldn't be as big of an issue. Or another way around it would be to have maybe a lock button, so when you press that button, all your settings are locked in for while you're shooting, and then you have to press that button again to be able to change your settings. I don't know, I feel like that might be quite a simple fix, but it's not a huge issue, but it's just something to be aware of. I do find myself knocking that quite a bit. One of the best features about the Lumix S5 II is to be able to shoot in open gate. Now open gate, if you've never heard of it, allows you to shoot the whole width of the sensor, both widthways and height, so you have more room to crop. Maybe you want to shoot a portrait video at the same time as shooting a landscape video. Nowadays that is a very useful feature to have. I'd really like to see that in more shooting modes, because I don't always want to be shooting in 6K. Most of the time I'm shooting in 4K, so I'd really like to be able to see open gate in 4K shooting modes, because I think open gate is a very useful feature. More cameras should have it, and yeah, I just think it'd be great in 4K as well. As we all know, there is a crop when you are shooting in 4K 60, which isn't a huge deal breaker. It can just be slightly annoying because maybe you might need to change lenses occasionally to be able to shoot as wide as you want to while shooting in a higher frame rate. But that is the same across other cameras as well, like the Sony a7 IV, the R6 Mark II, both have crops in 4K 60, so it isn't uncommon. But being able to shoot the full frame in 4K high frame rates would really help take this camera to the next level. And one further thing is 4K 120. Now I don't see this as a big thing because I don't typically shoot a lot of 100 or 120 frames a second. I typically shoot in 25 and 50. However, it would be really nice to have the 4K 120. But that being said, the 1080 in 120 in this does look absolutely brilliant, and it doesn't look out of place. It would just be nice to be able to match it up with the rest of the footage that this camera shoots. One final thing that I would really like to see is face only autofocus. Now the S5 II, as we know, has the new phase detect autofocus system compared to the original S5, which has contrast based autofocus, which I'm using right now. But what would be really cool is if it had face only autofocus. So that means that if I was to leave the frame, if I was to do that now, it would then focus on the background. But if it was face only, it wouldn't then hunt to the background, which means you don't get that kind of pulsing that you get with autofocus when you leave the frame. Having face only would solve all of that, and it would be a dream come true for a lot of filmmakers, especially solo filmmakers, because it would make their lives so much easier. So there's just a few things I would like to see on the next update of the Lumix S5ii. I think this is a brilliant camera. It is my favourite camera I've ever used, and switching to Lumix a few months ago, almost a year ago now, is one of the best things I've done for my videography, filmmaking and photography. But as we know, this is more aimed towards the video side of things, and I absolutely love it. I would highly recommend it if you are interested. They're a lot of fun to use. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Come and say hello. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I shall see you in the next video. 30 seconds left on my memory card. Fam, my heart was pounding a little bit then. I didn't know if I was going to make it.